Imagine an army that fought with paintbrushes instead of guns. An army that defeated Hitler's forces not by killing, but by deception. This was not a myth. This was the Ghost Army, one of the most extraordinary secrets of World War II. For decades, the story remained classified, but when the truth was finally revealed, historians were stunned, because this small band of American artists, actors, and sound engineers helped turn the tide of war, armed only with imagination. It all began in 1944. The Allies were advancing through Europe after the D-Day invasion, but every victory came with unbearable losses. Hitler's armies were still powerful, entrenched across France and Germany, and every move the Allies made was met with devastating counterattacks. The U.S. Army knew it needed something new, something unpredictable. So, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops were born, an experimental unit unlike anything in history. Their mission, to deceive the enemy. Their weapon, art, sound, and illusion. Officially, they were just another combat group. Unofficially, they were the most creative army the world had ever seen. The Ghost Army was made up of just over 1,100 men, painters, sound engineers, set designers, architects, and actors. Many came straight from art schools, design studios, or even Broadway stages. Among them was Bill Blass, who would later become a world-famous fashion designer, and Ellsworth Kelly, who would rise to fame as a modern artist after the war. But back then, they were soldiers of deception, sworn to secrecy. Their orders were top secret. Make the Germans believe that a massive American force was positioned somewhere it wasn't. In reality, there were only a few hundred of them. How could such a small group fool the German army? With genius and a touch of madness. Imagine hundreds of tanks and artillery guns rolling across a field, except they're made of rubber. Yes, rubber tanks. The Ghost Army used inflatable vehicles that could be assembled in minutes. From a distance, through binoculars or reconnaissance planes, they looked completely real. The deception was perfect. Then came the sound. Sound engineers from Hollywood used giant speakers to blast recorded battle noises, tanks clanking, trucks rumbling, soldiers shouting. Each recording was layered and played in loops, carefully calibrated to echo across miles of countryside. The Germans listening nearby would swear an entire division was moving in, but it wasn't. It wasn't just the visuals and sound. The Ghost Army went further. They acted. These soldiers became actors on the battlefield. They wore the patches and insignias of real divisions. They painted fake numbers on their jeeps and created phony radio traffic to mimic entire battalions. In French villages, Ghost Army members would walk into cafes and casually let slip false information about troop movements, knowing that Nazi informants were everywhere. Every detail mattered. Even tire tracks were forged. They dragged chains behind trucks to make it look like heavy tanks had passed through. Each deception was a stage production of war, performed under real danger. Because if the Germans discovered the truth, the Ghost Army had no heavy weapons to defend themselves. They would be slaughtered instantly. And yet, they did it, over and over again. Their first major performance came during the Siege of Brest in France. The Ghost Army was tasked with convincing German forces that a massive American unit was attacking from the south, when in truth, the real assault was coming from another direction. Inflatable tanks filled entire fields overnight. Sound trucks blasted recordings of engines and artillery. Fake campfires burned through the night. The deception worked. The Germans diverted troops south, weakening their defenses where the real attack would strike. The Allies captured Brest faster than anyone had predicted. The experiment was a success, and the Ghost Army had just begun. By December 1944, winter had frozen Europe, and the war was reaching its bloodiest point. Hitler launched a desperate counterattack through the Ardennes forest, the Battle of the Bulge. Chaos consumed the Allied lines. Communication broke down. Fear spread everywhere. In this critical moment, the Ghost Army was called into action once again. Their mission? To hold the line through illusion. They created the image of an entire armored division preparing for a counterattack. Inflatable tanks appeared overnight. Fake artillery thundered in the distance. Radio operators transmitted endless chatter about imaginary reinforcements. And the Germans, uncertain and exhausted, hesitated. That hesitation, those few crucial hours, gave the real Allied troops time to regroup and strike back. It was one of the greatest performances in military history. In March 1945, the Allies were preparing to cross the Rhine River into Germany, a turning point that could decide the war in Europe. But Hitler's forces still held the opposite bank in strength. The Ghost Army's final and most dangerous mission was Operation Viersen. They were to deceive the Germans into thinking the main crossing would happen far from the real location. Once again, rubber tanks inflated under the moonlight. Fake radio traffic filled the airwaves. Engineers constructed dummy bridges while loudspeakers blasted sounds of troop movement and construction. At dawn, the illusion was complete. Thousands of German soldiers concentrated their defenses at the wrong spot. Meanwhile, real Allied forces crossed the Rhine River almost unopposed, ending the Nazi stronghold in Western Germany. The Ghost Army had pulled off their masterpiece. Their deception saved thousands of lives and helped bring the war to an end. When the war ended, the members of the Ghost Army returned home quietly. Their mission was classified. They couldn't tell anyone what they had done, not even their families. For more than 40 years, the world had no idea these men existed. While others were decorated for valor in battle, the Ghost Army remained invisible, their contribution buried in military archives. Many of them went on to reshape post-war America's culture. Painters, sculptors, architects, fashion designers. They left their mark on art and design. But their greatest creation was the illusion that saved lives. It wasn't until the 1990s that their story finally came to light. Declassified documents revealed their operations, and historians began to understand just how crucial their work had been. In 2022, the U.S. Congress finally awarded the Ghost Army the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the nation's highest honors, a long overdue recognition for soldiers who fought not with bullets, but with brilliance. One surviving member, 98 years old at the time, said, "We weren't heroes in the traditional sense. We were just artists trying to end the war faster, and if our illusions saved lives, that was enough." Today, the story of the Ghost Army reminds us of something profound, that creativity can be as powerful as courage, that art, when used for good, can outwit evil, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon of all is imagination. This was the Ghost Army, the secret artists who fooled Hitler's forces, saved thousands, and disappeared into history's shadows. Their story stayed hidden for decades, but now it belongs to the world. If you love stories like this, leave a like, share, and subscribe to Hidden U.S. History, because sometimes the truth sounds stranger than fiction.